Welcome to the Football Frenzy, episode 2, the most recent installment. As always, I'm Paul Valle, and joining me again, as always, is Adam Rothgeb. Adam, how are we doing today, man?
Good. How about yourself?
Doing well, man. Happy to be doing another show with you.
Yes.
Ravens defeated the Cardinals 23-17 on Sunday. Lamar Jackson played at an MVP level for a second straight week. Yes. 272 yards passing, throws for 2 touchdowns, no picks. Also had 16 carries for 120 yards, a far cry from what we saw the week before. We had just 3 carries for 6 yards.
Yes.
Really paced that Ravens offense. Like I said, they got that victory 23-17. A little bit closer than we expected it to be against the Cardinals team that isn't expected to do much this year.
Yes.
What are your thoughts on the game this past week, and what did you see, and what would you like to see them improve on?
As far as the game, it came down to, some late fourth quarter passes from Lamar to kind of save the bacon. It was in the balance there at the end.
Yeah.
And like I kind of discussed, I was a little worried about this game going in. The difference in the offense that the Cardinals play, this air raid, this stretch you out, this 4 wide receivers, and just bombing all over the field and really put your secondary on their heels and put pressure on you all over the field. It worked out for them again later in the game. We held them down most of the time, but they started making plays, started finding that rhythm, and I think part of that was helped by Lamar ran a lot himself,
right?
But we did not get our running game going the way we need to get it going, meaning Ingram, Edwards, Hill, and we made the plays we needed to make. The Cardinals are looking a little more surprising on offense than I expected.
Yeah. Well, and you had mentioned last week, we talked about it in the show, that they run a lot of 4 wide receiver sets.
Yes.
Right. So they don't run the ball a ton. It's that air raid offense. The ageless wonder that we talked about, Larry Fitzgerald, he was seemingly wide open all day.
Dangerous man.
A lot of struggles with the zone defense.
Yes.
They had 2 receivers. Christian Kirk, he had 6 catches, 114 yards, and Fitzgerald 5 catches, 104 yards. They were able to keep them out of the end zone through the air.
Yes.
David Johnson did get that rushing touchdown in the second half, but Kyler Murray, 342 passing yards, really picked apart that Ravens defense. Now, a lot of that is throwing the ball a lot in the second half, trying to come back because they were down the entire game. The Ravens never relinquished that lead.
Yes.
And what I also wanted to talk about a little bit was it seemed like the Ravens on offense left a little bit on the field. The running backs, the team rushed for 182 yards after rushing for 265 yards last week, but 120 of that was from your quarterback.
Yes.
The 3 running backs that you mentioned, Ingram, Hill, and Edwards, 17 carries, 62 yards.
Yes.
They need to be better.
It's not going to cut it.
Right, and we watched the games together most weeks.
Yes.
And you were going off about how they need to run the ball. They need to run the ball, and you didn't mean Lamar.
No.
Expand on that.
I don't want Lamar to run the ball 16 times out of necessity. When he has to run the ball 16 times out of necessity, that means our running game is not operating at peak level.
Right.
Peak level for our running game means, yes, Lamar is going to get some carries. He's going to do some damage, especially on third downs and picking up first downs on a broken pass play, that, this or that. But our running backs should be averaging about 150 yards a game. In my opinion, that's when we're at peak performance, optimal performance, as far as our rushing attack is concerned. So if we can build on this, we saw a lot out of the first game with our running backs. That was good. That was encouraging. We saw Lamar revert back to Lamar of last year a little bit with his running game, with yet a still improved passing game. But even Lamar was very, very upset with himself, with missing some things, not getting that 4th down conversion, the delay of game. He was very, very frustrated. He said in his presser, I feel like I left stuff out on the field. And he was very upset, visibly upset. And I like to see that from my quarterback. He wants to do 100% every time out on the field, and he's going to strive to do that for us every game.
Right, and I liked that after the game because it went with what we saw, with how we were feeling about the game. After the game, he was upset with what they left on the field. Felt like they could, the entire game, it felt like they could be doing more. Yes. It didn't feel like the Cardinals' defense was so much stopping them. It felt like the Ravens were kind of stopping themselves and moving the ball down the field. Now, look, when your team goes out and scores 59 points and does everything perfectly in week 1, you have heightened expectations, right? And look, they went out there, they scored 23 points, they dominated time of possession 38-22, basically. So they did a lot of good things offensively, but I also think it speaks to how far this team has come and where they're going to go, that they win a game at home, and winning a game in the NFL isn't easy.
No.
They win a game at home, and we're thinking it could have been more.
Yes. It should have been more.
Yeah.
I mean, there were certain plays here or there, missed third downs, the delay a game on that fourth down, which I think they were primed to push through that and get that, and then maybe score another touchdown there instead of having to settle for 3 points. I mean, you're talking about, at least 10 points in a difference that I think we could have had more of. And at that point, the game looks a little bit more like we thought it might look like. But, I stress this to everybody coming forward, that this Arizona team is going to provide problems for a lot of people, especially as Kyler Murray gets more and more comfortable seeing these defenses, knowing what he's looking at, getting used to what he's got to get used to. And as far as Kingsbury, their coach, calling the plays, what he's got to do better, they're going to cause problems for teams. And don't be surprised if they knock off a couple of people down the way.
Oh, yeah. I think that this team they're probably not as bad as we thought that they were. Now, look, this isn't a team that's going to come out and win 8 games this year.
No.
But they're not the Miami Dolphins either.
I don't think anybody's... The Detroit Lions from, 2008, they're sitting there saying, please be as bad as us, and actually look a lot worse.
Yeah, they look a lot worse. At least the Lions were in some of those games. So.
Yes.
But look, a lot of positives out of this game. You had Hollywood Brown and Mark Andrews combining for 16 catches and nearly 200 yards between the two of them. Andrews, 16 targets, 16 catches this year, leads all tight ends in the NFL, 220 receiving yards. He has 2 touchdowns.
Yes.
The defense, stifling again. They gave up 22 yards rushing to the Cardinals. They're only allowing 20.5 yards rushing per game. By far and away tops in the NFL. More that Ravens defense than we've become accustomed to over the 25 years of this franchise.
Yes, very well. The secondary, I mean, with a couple of new pieces moving around the back end, you expect a little bit of miscommunication here and there. I got to button that up for this coming week, which we'll get to shortly. Mark Andrews, I mean, me and you talked about this, and I've talked about it with several people. He is going to be a dark horse tight end moving forward for this year, and then people are really going to know who Mark Andrews is by midseason, because he is an absolute stud. Hollywood Brown, I mean, they dominated the targets from Lamar. I mean, 21 total targets between the two of them, or 22 total targets, excuse me. And you had him spread them around to everybody else. Couple catches here, one. I mean, all down the line. It was 10 different receivers touched the ball. You're looking at a whole lot of different things that this offense can do, and to spread it around as much as he can. Now, obviously, you're going to have a couple of people who dominate the targets, but when you have this many options that can cause damage to you, it's phenomenal. On the defense, Judon impressed me again this week. Right. Getting after the quarterback, another sack, 3 more quarterback hits. 3 more sacks this week. Everybody's saying, well, the offensive line for the Cardinals. Yeah, but you're talking about a Kyler Murray who can move around. He's a lot like Lamar. I can get out of the pocket. I can move around you. I can miss these hits. And we did another fantastic job of just bottling him up pretty good and making the plays we needed to make when we need to do.
Absolutely. And Pernell McPhee has 3 sacks through 2 games. Yes. That's something that you like to see. I think the Ravens really know how to use a guy who's getting a little long in the tooth in the NFL. But I firmly believe the Ravens have arguably the best coaching staff in all of football, and they know how to get the most out of their players. Yes. A lot of people saying that you can't really judge this team yet because they've played 2 of the lesser teams in the NFL. The real litmus test is coming this weekend. They're going up against the Kansas City Chiefs, and you have Patrick Mahomes, 821 yards, 7 touchdowns. You have 2 quarterbacks who are throwing for over 700 yards, have over, I'm sorry, not over 700 yards, but you have 2 quarterbacks who have thrown over 70% completion rate, 7 touchdowns, no picks. This is a marquee matchup, and this is the real test to see where the Ravens stand in the AFC this season.
This is a big test. This is on the road. Kansas City Chiefs home opener, which
Right.
Arrowhead, as anybody who watches football and has done it for a long time knows, Arrowhead is probably the loudest stadium in football, and that's including all domes. I mean,
Right.
It's deafening in there. As you mentioned, that's a historical fact right there, with 70% completion percentage, 7 touchdowns, no interceptions. First time 2 quarterbacks meeting in NFL history after their first 2 games. Lamar set a little bit of history himself this last game. 250 yards passing, 120 rushing yards. Only quarterback in NFL history in the regular season, because I know there will be people who point out that Colin Kaepernick in the playoffs against Green Bay.
If you didn't say it, I would have.
But we're talking about regular season here, but postseason doesn't count as far as NFL records are concerned when it comes to this. But it's going to be interesting because Kansas City's multifaceted. They don't have Tyreek Hill. What do they care?
Right.
Patrick Mahomes basically took off the first quarter, third quarter, and the fourth quarter. He literally threw for 270 yards and all 4 touchdowns in the second quarter.
Right.
I mean, they were down 10-0. I was like, "Ooh, I was a little surprised by that." And then what happens? Halftime, 28-10.
Exactly.
They didn't need to do anything else after that.
I was actually surprised because I focused more on that Saints-Rams game after the Ravens game on Sunday, and I saw that it was 28-10 at halftime. I turned that game back on late in the fourth quarter, and it was still 28-10.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if that was more so them kind of pumping the brakes or Oakland playing good football.
From what I can tell, from what I can gather, I didn't get a chance to put eyes on it too much because of the Rams and the Saints game, but I don't think it was so much them putting the brakes to themselves. I think the Raiders actually played some really solid defensive football, minus that second quarter. If they could have reeled that in a little bit in the second quarter, it would have been different. Kansas City only rushed for 31 yards in that game.
Right.
So they have pretty much a 0 rushing game the first 2 weeks of the season.
Yeah, I think they have 150 yards in 2 games.
I mean, their leading rusher is LaShawn McCoy, and he only has, it's minimal. It's under 40 yards rushing total for the season. And that's pretty pathetic given the fact of what LaShawn McCoy was and what the Kansas City Chiefs do. But when you have Patrick Mahomes, you can just sling it all over the field. And you got guys like Travis Kelce, Demarcus Robinson, who went off last game. Sammy Watkins, who went off the first game. He took a little bit of a break. Only 6 catches this week. And you got Mecole Hardman, who was your draft pick for them to replace Tyreek Hill in case anything happened with him, suspension-wise, league-wise, but he scored a nice long touchdown. It's an offense that scares you, and it's going to be exciting to see how each offense plays up against our defense, considering last year's matchup, in which case I'm really, really looking forward to this.
Yeah, and you mentioned LaShawn McCoy. He did have 80 yards rushing week 1. So he's a leading rusher. He averaged under 2 yards a carry on Sunday for the Chiefs. They're not running the ball very well. You would think that they'd be missing Tyreek Hill, but Travis Kelce kills you every week, right? And then, so week 1, you have Sammy Watkins coming out of nowhere, 11 catches, 198 yards, and 3 touchdowns. So then, like you said, 6 catches, 49 yards. He takes the week off, basically, and allows Demarcus Robinson to come out and pick up 7 catches, 172 yards, and 2 touchdowns.
Yep.
So it's, you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't, because Patrick Mahomes throws his receivers open. He gets the most of what he has. He's not missing Tyreek Hill right now.
No, he's not. And Sammy Watkins led him in targets again this week, 13 total targets. So you know where the bulk of the targets are going to go. Now it's just what they do with these secondary receivers, the McCall Hardmans, the Demarcus Robinsons. Travis Kelce is a problem. Hopefully our linebackers can stick with him a little bit. Hopefully Earl Thomas can help us stick with him a little bit. I mean, he's probably the number 1 tight end in the NFL right now.
Right.
I don't think that's a question, not in my mind anyway. So it's going to be something that we got to really focus on. Who do we target to limit? And then we're going to have to deal with whoever beats us after that, or if they're going to beat us, because you don't want Travis Kelce to beat you, and you don't want Sammy Watkins to beat you. So you got to limit them and then try to contain as best you can your secondaries and your third receivers for them, because that's where it's going to bother you if you can contain their top 2 targets.
Right. And that's the name of the game, is containing that passing game. You're not going to stop it.
No.
You can only hope to slow it down. Last year's game, Lamar Jackson's only loss of the season. In the regular season, he did lose in the playoffs.
Yes.
But in the regular season, his only regular season loss. But he had a higher quarterback rating than Patrick Mahomes. Now, Mahomes threw 53 passes to Lamar's 24.
Yeah.
Right? He had as many completions as Lamar had attempts. Threw for over 300 yards, touchdown, a pick. Lamar, 2 touchdowns, no picks, had a better quarterback rating. Did leave the game when they needed him because of a twisted ankle in overtime. Had to watch RG3 try and complete 2 passes at the end of the game that fell incomplete.
Yeah.
But this is the marquee matchup because you have the Ravens and their top-ranked rushing offense against the Chiefs and their top-ranked passing offense. Ravens, second in the NFL in total defense behind the Patriots. Now the Patriots, got a patsy too. But they did dominate that Steelers offense.
It was pathetic.
So and they had a great game against the Dolphins to kind of take over for the Ravens. Ravens still second overall in total defense and number 1 against the run. Not really that big of a deal when you're going against the best passing team in the NFL, but definitely a marquee matchup, something to keep our eye on. It's arguably 2 of the best quarterbacks in the NFL right now, 2 of the best young quarterbacks going off against each other, and this could be the beginning of. I saw somebody posted on Twitter, and I'm not sure that I agree with it, but it could be the beginning of a Manning versus Brady-esque rivalry.
It's way early for that.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens. I mean, the Manning-Brady rivalry became part of lore because of the playoff matchups they had against each other. So we got to see these guys against each other in the playoffs 2-3 times, have epic battles, and we'll see what we get from there. As far as this is concerned, this is just a great Week 3 matchup. Great litmus test for both the Ravens and the Chiefs. And we're going to see where we stand when this comes out after 4 o'clock on Sunday this week.
Well, the good news is the Ravens have a 2-game lead in the division over the Bengals and Steelers, a 1-game lead over the uninspiring Browns. We're going to move it over to our segment, The Playoff Push, right now. We're going to start with the Bengals. They lost to the 49ers 41-17, rejuvenated 49ers team is playing really great defense through the first 2 weeks.
Yes.
Jimmy Garoppolo kind of hitting his stride. Week 1 was Week 2, he really turned it on. That 49ers offense racked up 572 yards of total offense against that Bengals defense.
They looked really good. They were very efficient. They made the right plays. They forced the turnovers against Andy Dalton. They did everything they needed to do, and they did it well. I mean, Garoppolo came out on fire. He made all the right reads. He made all the right passes. 3 touchdowns on Sunday. Like I said, they really beat up Andy Dalton. They made Andy Dalton look like Andy Dalton again.
Right.
Andy Dalton looked like an MVP candidate in Week 1, and at home in the home opener, the 49ers embarrassed them 41-17.
Well, and that's what Andy Dalton does, right?
Yes.
He'll come out and he'll have a great game where he throws for 320 yards, 3 touchdowns, or 400-plus yards like he did in Week 1, and then he'll come out and put out a dud. Now, look, he didn't play particularly terribly on Sunday, but wasn't able to do enough, and it's really hard for Andy Dalton to get anything going when that running game can't get anything going. No. They have 59 rushing yards through 2 games, and that's with the AFC's leading rusher from last year, Joe Mixon, and a really nice change of pace scat back in Giovanni Bernard, who can make people miss.
Yeah.
Not running the ball at all. They're averaging less than 2 yards a carry.
It's really bad. Mixon's nursing an ankle. Giovanni Bernard's actually their leading rusher this season.
Yeah, which is sad because they have 59 yards rushing.
With Mixon being the number 1 back, with him nursing that ankle, it's limiting him, and it's hurting their offense. I think it especially hurt their offense against the 49ers. They could have done some damage on the ground against them, but I mean, if Andy Dalton can play solid quarterback and they get a B running game out of their running backs, they've got a good chance to do some damage to some teams. But without the threat of Joe Mixon, Bernard's okay. He's really great out of the backfield. Hell of a receiver out of the backfield, but he's not the between the tackles runner like Mixon is. And that's where their offense can thrive, with Joe Mixon really limiting Andy Dalton's pass attempts, because when he passes the ball way too many times, sooner or later something bad's going to happen, and that's what happens.
Well, it's like what we remember watching Joe Flacco for 11 years.
Yes.
It's a game where you want him throwing the ball 30 times or less.
Yep.
You get up into the 40, 50 range, that means that you're losing football games because you're throwing the ball a ton to try and come back.
You don't want that.
Yeah. So they're facing the Bills team that's 2-0. They beat the Jets. The Jets aren't a great football team. This despite turning the ball over 4 times. And then Josh Allen actually played a really good football game on Sunday. He's got 2 rushing touchdowns, 2 passing touchdowns on the year. That Bills rushing attack, they have 279 yards rushing as a team. Now in Baltimore, that's
a game.
Yeah, that's a game. So, but 279 yards rushing as a team. They're averaging over 4.7 yards per carry. Another ageless wonder in Frank Gore. He went for 68 yards and a touchdown at the ripe age of 36 on Sunday. Bengals may have a lot to work with here.
They do. It's something where Josh Allen has progressed and he's gotten better and he's looking better this year. He's made some silly mistakes. Yes, he's still young. It's going to happen. We're waiting for Lamar to make his first couple of silly mistakes. It's going to happen sooner or later. But he's looked really good, very poised. He's pushing his team down the field. He's making the big plays when the team needs him to make the big plays. Somebody we saw here last year, John Brown, he's on fire to start the season. 14 receptions, 195 yards, and a touchdown. We saw that John Brown last year early in the season. If they can keep getting that kind of production out of him, that only helps Josh Allen moving forward. That rookie running back, Devin Singletary, has looked really good. 10 rushes, 127 yards, and a touchdown. They've got some pieces to work with. Their secondary is fantastic. They have a really tough defense. Look for them to make a little bit of noise in the wild card this year. I don't know if they've got it in them just yet, but don't be surprised if they make a late push.
And this is a team that's certainly on the rise, and it always helps a team when you have a young quarterback to build around.
Yes.
And it infuses a little bit of energy into a team when they see a guy like Josh Allen, who is also a dual threat quarterback. He can run, he can throw. And this Bills team, they're young, they're hungry, and it's a team that, like you said, they could make a little bit of noise in the wild card. I personally think they might fall a little bit short this year, but they're up and coming. This is a young team that's going to keep growing, and they're going to be a good football team for a lot of years in the AFC. So the Bengals certainly have their hands full this weekend. I imagine that solid secondary will probably force a couple of Andy Dalton picks because that's what Andy Dalton does.
Most likely.
So we'll see how that goes. Moving on, Browns beat the Jets 23-3 on Monday Night Football. Baker Mayfield 19-35, 325 yards, and with a touchdown interception. Numbers a little bit inflated because OBJ, he took a slant pass over the middle and took it 89 yards to the house. His longest career touchdown. He had 6 catches for 161 yards in that long score. But this team is another team we talked about uninspiring football. They were paper champions, and they have looked mediocre at best, especially against a Jets team that was missing their defensive captain in C.J. Mosley and their starting quarterback in Sam Darnold. It didn't look good despite the 20-point win.
No, it was sloppy. I watched that whole game from start to finish.
Me too.
It was very sloppy. Baker Mayfield, he put up some decent numbers, but again, he was very inaccurate. Inaccurate down the field all night long. He put some receivers in some bad positions. His tight end, I'm sure he's having a few words with him this week.
Oh no, right? He could have broken his neck.
That was pretty bad. He's looked off kilter. The whole offense has looked off kilter. The play calling is suspect at best most of the time. The Jets, I really thought, if Simeon doesn't get injured, maybe he gets a little bit going in the second half. Maybe could have made more of a game of it, but they really, again, penalties again. They had 8 more penalties this past weekend. 2 personal fouls by Myles Garrett. 1 severely injuring Trevor Siemian, which knocked him out of the game.
He's out for the year.
And that looked gruesome. The fact that man walked off the field was surprising.
His ankle jammed into the ground and bent forward at a 90 degree. It was awful, and he walked off.
He walked off the field and back into the back by himself. But it was lackluster. The Jets missing pieces all over the field, and the fact that they even kept it within 20 points was a win for them coming against what they were facing. But the Browns got the Rams this week. And they're not going to get that same kind of leeway when it comes to a team coming and playing them at home.
And Jared Goff, underwhelming as he's been this year, he ain't Luke Falk.
No.
All right, Luke Falk, 20 to 25, 198 yards. Now, a lot of those were little short passes here and there. Le'Veon Bell caught the ball 10 times for 61 yards. Robbie Anderson had himself a good game for the Jets despite the 20-point loss. But for the Browns, they brought in OBJ to be a 1-2 combo with Jarvis Landry. Landry's a 7 catches, 99 yards through the first 2 games. They have 172 yards rushing through 2 games, which it's not awful, right? But it's not great. Nick Chubb not getting as much work as you would think that he would get, and not being as effective. He did have a nice touchdown reception there in the second quarter, but the Browns, I'm not impressed, and we're led to believe that this team is going to be a world beater, and they're just not doing anything.
I get it. It's early in the season, and everybody's still getting comfortable with everybody. And the head coach, who's also the offensive play caller, and being this is his first time doing either one, with the exception of the last few games of last season, with Freddie Kitchens being their offensive play caller. But it just looks disjointed. It doesn't look right, and Baker Mayfield's showing that he's off. He's way off. A lot of times, way off on passes, and it looks like he's forcing the ball to OBJ, and that could lead to problems later down the road if you continue to force the ball. Sooner or later, I don't care how great of friends OBJ and Jarvis Landry are. Jarvis is going to be like, hey, wait a minute, I've caught 100 balls in this league several times as well. I need to get some touches. I can help this offense move forward too. So they just look off, and I can't wait to see what their litmus test looks like against the Rams this coming week.
Right. Either way, it looks like the Browns are kind of maybe bought a little too much into their own hype. Yes. They got a huge test against the Rams this week, and they, if the Ravens somehow pull off a victory against the Chiefs, the Browns could be looking at a 2-game deficit in the AFC North.
That would be great.
And you want that cushion for your team. But big test against a Rams team that plays solid defense. They have a good young quarterback in Jared Goff, and they rushed the ball really well, 281 yards rushing in 2 games. So we'll see how that goes. Browns, they could be off to a 1-2 start here through 3 games.
Let's hope.
The big news of the week, though, the Steelers, they lost to the Seahawks 28-26. Russell Wilson, 300 yards passing, 3 touchdowns. Steelers defense has given up over 300 yards passing and 3 touchdowns to each of their first 2 opponents. Now, it's Tom Brady and Russell Wilson, but still giving up the yards. But the big story there, Roethlisberger did not play the second half with an injured elbow. Turns out he needed surgery. He's out for the year. Mason Rudolph taking over. He was 12-19 for about 112 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. Not great, but didn't look like he can't at least try potentially help this team win. They're not running the ball well. No. James Conner, another guy, left the game with a knee injury. They don't think it's serious. He expects to play on Sunday.
Yes.
But this Steelers team, they got embarrassed on Sunday Night Football by the Patriots week 1. They go out and play a tough game against the Seahawks, but come up short. And now they're missing their starting quarterback.
It's going to be tough. This has all the makings of the Steelers season's over. Roethlisberger goes down. Their running game is pathetic. I mean, pathetic. This is not Steelers football. Their defense looks like the Miami Dolphins defense. I mean, you're giving up 300-yard passes and 3 touchdowns for candy. Is it Halloween already? I don't know. They're going down there trick-or-treating. Your home game, your first home game of the season, and you give up another 300-yard passer and 3 touchdowns. Mm-hmm. I don't care who you're going against. That doesn't usually happen for Pittsburgh, and especially a team coming from the West Coast. It just looks disjointed. I really thought going into the season, without the headaches of Antonio Brown and Le'Veon Bell, this team would rally around each other and say, let's go prove everybody wrong. We've got this. And man was I wrong so far. Now Mason Rudolph, he looked okay, forced in there. Maybe now gets first team reps, gets a little comfortable. Maybe he can do some damage, but unless they get that running game going and that defense fixed, I don't care how well that kid plays. They ain't going to go nowhere.
Right. They're not stopping the pass. They're not getting after the quarterback.
Nope.
Now they're not stopping the run. 151 yards rushing for the Seahawks. This was the leading rushing team in the NFL last year.
Yes.
Rushed for about 70 yards against the Bengals in week 1. Came out, rededicated themselves to the run while also dedicating themselves to the pass, obviously with a 300-yard passer. The Seahawks, this game wasn't as close as the final score would have indicated.
No, the Steelers made a little bit of a push there with Mason Rudolph in the second half. The Seahawks looked really good. It looked like they just kind of opened up and played a little bit of zone and back off a little bit, not letting any big plays over their heads. The Steelers closed the gap late, but it definitely wasn't as close as that 20-26 final. The Seahawks, another good year, another good team, it looks like for them, but the Steelers, there's so many problems, and it's early, and it's early enough for them to fix them. I just don't know if they can.
Right.
I mean, you have the talent to rush the passer. T.J. Watt is a very gifted pass rusher. For them to not have any pressure building at any point in time in these games, it's bad to see for them. It's great to see for the Ravens, but they've got time to work it out. Let's see if they do it this week.
Yeah, and the Steelers, 250 yards rushing allowed, 125 yards a game. Look, it's the NFL, so it's not terrible, but when you look at, they're giving up 125 yards rushing a game, and the Ravens are giving up 20 yards rushing a game.
Yes.
That's your direct opponent in the AFC North. Then they go out and a bit of a head scratcher. We want to make a Fitzpatrick, but weren't willing to give up a first-round pick for him. Steelers traded their first-round pick next year, which might be a top 10 pick, when they could be looking to get a quarterback. They trade that first-round pick, a fifth-round pick, and then a sixth-round pick in 2021 for Minka Fitzpatrick. Doesn't really make sense for a team that's probably not going very far this year.
They feel like they're still contenders.
Yeah,
and that's what this literally responds to everybody saying, no, we're not giving up on the season just because Ben's out. No, we're contenders. We're dedicated to fix the secondary, which is why you're bringing in Minka Fitzpatrick, who has been, with the exception of this year, he's been a very, very solid corner since he came out of college. So they're looking to fix this problem, try to move forward, and try to compete still in this AFC North, and see if they can't maybe make the playoffs and do a little damage. But it looks a little too late for me, given just 2 weeks in. But there's so many problems with this team.
Well, it shows they have a lot of faith in Mason Rudolph.
Yes.
It also shows that this is a team. I mean, Minka Fitzpatrick was the 11th pick in the draft in 2018, so maybe they don't have it this year, but it shows that they're probably expecting to have Roethlisberger for each of the next 2, maybe 3 seasons. Plays out to the end of that contract, and then you have a guy who's under your team control in this rookie contract for the next 3 or 4 years after this year in Minka Fitzpatrick, who can really stabilize that secondary. So it could be a move for the future more than a move for this year. With that in mind, it makes a little bit more sense, but still giving up what could potentially be a top 10 pick
baffling.
is a little baffling.
Well, another funny note with Roethlisberger, he commented after this, I'm looking forward to being a mentor, being on the sidelines and helping my... You remember what Roethlisberger said when they drafted Mason Rudolph?
Yep. I'm
not looking to mentor anybody. I'm going to be around here for another 3 years. Funny how things change your tune when you injure your elbow and you might be worried about losing your starting job.
Right. So, well... We're almost done. Last week I almost forgot to give my prediction. He reminded me of it. So what's your prediction for this Sunday?
Ravens got to run the ball, and I mean you're running all 3 running backs. We got to have that time of possession. We got to be up there around 37, 38 minutes again this week. We've got to keep that offense off the field as much as we can. Now, I'm not saying you don't hit some big plays when you can, but it's just nice to be able to run the ball and force their offense to just sit there on the sideline and wait. It's going to be tough fought. It's going to be a little higher scoring than it was last year, in my opinion. Unfortunately, I have to pick the Chiefs in this. I'm looking at about 35-31 Chiefs. The Ravens come up a little short in the end this week. I just can't go against Patrick Mahomes and what I'm seeing him do so far this year as pleasantly surprised as how well Lamar's been throwing the ball this year. I just don't know that we've got enough in the tank to go against that offense just yet.
I think that for the Ravens to have 38 minutes of possession, that probably means that the Chiefs are getting big chunk plays. Mm-hmm. The Ravens have controlled the ball for just about 78 minutes of a total 120 this year. So they've really dominated the time of possession through the first 2 weeks. I don't see that continuing on Sunday. That being said, I think that Lamar is ultra competitive. Now, you have to be to be in the NFL, but this is a guy who hates to lose. Yes. And I think that since this schedule came out in April, he's had this date circled because he knows it's his only professional loss.
Yep.
He's balling out this year, right? He's a threat with his arm. He's a threat with his legs. Now, Patrick Mahomes, best quarterback in football right now. I don't think there's any argument against that. I know that Mahomes has the edge as a passer. I think Lamar has a bit of an equalizer with his legs. I think the Ravens' defense is better than the Chiefs' defense. And I think it's the intangibles. I think that it's who wants it more. The Ravens know if they win this game that it puts them on the map in the AFC, whereas the Chiefs are looking at it as we're in a division with the Broncos. We're in a division with the Raiders. We probably got this. Yeah. I think the Ravens end up wanting it more. I think it comes down to a late field goal, and I think the Ravens are going to pull it out 33-30. I think Lamar wants that win more than Mahomes does.
I hope you're right. I really do. It should be fun. It should be a real entertaining game, and I can't wait to sit down on Sunday and watch that.
And I'm probably going to have a coronary by the middle of the fourth quarter. So
don't we always?
Yeah, but that's Ravens football. That's what we're used to. So that's going to do it for the Football Frenzy. Thanks again to Adam Rothgeb for joining me on the show today. He's going to be with me every week. So we're going to keep doing it every week as long as you guys keep watching, keep listening. Thanks for joining us, and we'll talk to you next week. Go Ravens.
See ya.